Hi everybody, Philosophical Phoenix, finally back, and today's video topic is called Walking Between Worlds, and it's inspired by the fact that we increasingly live, all of us, in dangerous times, more divided from each other, and from nature, and from the world around us every day, it seems like. We now tend to treat every disagreement, no matter how small, as a crucial difference, whereas once we knew how to enjoy a healthy discussion, even a debate, and walk away friends, reserving our really divisive arguments for things that really truly mattered, life and death, things of great import, and pretty much agreeing to disagree about everything else. How do we get back to that? What happened to us? And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think the first step is to go back to basics, and I mean really basic basics, as in, what is reality, really? Now, Oxford Languages, I like language, so of course I go to the dictionary definition first, and that is the world or the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. Okay? And, let's say we describe the real world. We tend to use descriptive language, as in, the sky is blue, the planet is a globe, etc. And we think of reality as tangible, as solid fact, rather than ethereal, imaginal worlds like fantasy or science fiction. Excuse me. And we describe our reality as three-dimensional, with time being the fourth dimension, which allows us to operate, to move, and to grow through the other three dimensions. And so reality, we've covered this, of course, reality does include interaction, of course, with other 3D entities, whether we're talking about living creatures or inanimate objects. We would describe rocks, for instance, as solid matter with weight and heft. But then we go around like this, but then we remember taking basic science classes, atomic theory, which we learned in elementary school. And we find that, in fact, our perception is mostly illusion, which is created for us by our sensory perceptions. The only way that we really have as humans to interact with the world around us and other creatures is through our senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, etc. Not etc., that's it. So subatomic theory, as we all know, reveals that the densest, heaviest boulder, and even our tallest mountains, is actually made of mostly empty space in continuous, rapid motion. Atoms are built with a nucleus of protons and neutrons, and then they're surrounded by electrons which spin at an incredible speed. And everything within our reality is made up of atoms. And no one has ever seen an atom with the naked eye, of course, or its motion. But we know this because scientific principles built on atomic theory actually work. And that's the foundation of science. Does it work? Our technology works. Therefore, we know that the scientific principles behind the technology are, in fact, objectively true, at least in so far as it matters to us. So, take it another step further. We perceive ourselves as touching and handling objects around us, moving them, and so forth. But in reality, there's always space. between our hand and whatever it is that we're touching. Because we are made of atoms, we are always in perpetual motion, and so is anything that we touch. It's all a perpetual motion machine, never stopped, never still, even in death. Given these facts, shouldn't we reconsider which version of the world is real and which is notional or idealized? I think we should. I think it would help, obviously. So I'm going to reveal my nerd, my inner nerd. Not that this should shock anyone. I'm going to quote Albus Dumbledore's line from the Deathly Hallows 2 movie. Of course, it's all happening in your head, Harry. But why on earth should that mean that it isn't real? And you don't need to be familiar with the Harry Potter universe to appreciate the impact of that quote. It's all happening in your head, but why does that mean it's not real? All this, of course, has to be balanced with evidence, with facts, lest we descend into just complete anarchy and chaos. Not that I'm completely against chaos or anarchy, but that's another story. So in order to agree on anything and cooperate and accomplish anything, we have to share perceptions in common, and we have to be able to dependably interact with other people, with the world around us. So since we all perceive reality a little bit differently, or a lot differently, how do we ever agree on objective facts or truth? One fascinating thing that I have started paying more attention to is the frequent confluence of two separate, even seemingly opposed thought processes, which result in the same conclusion. And I'm going to use a bit of a controversial example because it's been breaking my heart to see what has been the disasters that have been hitting China. Beijing this past weekend was slammed with apocalyptic level flooding, including even the Forbidden City and Tiananmen Square, sacred sites, ancient, beautiful. And of course, Beijing is the capital city. So the Chinese government has reacted, as they always tend to, by initiating a cover-up, which includes the rest of China, not just the rest of the world, but the rest of China. People that are too far from the areas that are impacted directly by the flooding remain ignorant of it for the most part, unless they have family there and know firsthand somehow. And the rest of the world even more ignorant in general. So why cover up natural disasters that can't reasonably be blamed on any human agency? By the way, if you want to know, the channel that I have been watching on and off to get a lot of the information is called The China Show. It's on YouTube, and they have a lot of really great information. It's all compassionate and loving toward China, wanting the best for them. So anyway, check out The China Show if you would like. But so why does the government cover up natural disasters? They can't be blamed on the government. They can't be blamed on any human agency. So why hide it? The world would react with compassion the way it did to 9/11. We had international teams helping with that disaster, and it made a huge difference. You know, that always tends to happen with natural disasters. Why would China not want that? Not want to be included in the global community in such a case? Well, because they stand to lose their power and reputation if word should get out. The international community, they believe, would lose any respect they have because the disaster is exponentially worsened by the multiple failures of government. You might have heard of tofu drag construction, for instance. Um, that just means flimsy, dangerous building practices created by taking every shortcut, no matter how dangerous it is long term, in order to falsely inflate their sense of achievements. Um, and you may notice people praising China for being able to build, a huge building in a day. But what they will not tell you is that these buildings collapse without warning. There was a horrible incident July 23rd involving an award-winning Chinese school girls volleyball team. And all of them were crushed, just annihilated by the roof caving in on them. And that could be considered a tragic accident were it not for the safety practices in building that were totally ignored, followed by this incomprehensible decision to store heavy construction materials on the flimsy roof of the building. And it was a gymnasium, and the girls were in there practicing when the roof collapsed and crushed them all. So, the world would sympathize immediately with an unavoidable tragedy, a natural disaster, act of God, whatever you want to call it. But we will condemn an avoidable one, and we should. Especially when the whole motivation is simply to save face instead of saving lives. So this is just one example, and it's certainly not just China. America is guilty. Every country is guilty of unhealthy pride, because humans are guilty of that. So it's not to single out China, just to use them as a prominent example that I've been really heartbroken over. So why exclude even the rest of China? The rest of China cannot be allowed to know these disasters, large or small scale, for a different reason, which is the mandate of heaven. And this is an ancient spiritually based instruction, which basically states, it's like the Bible prophecies. Basically, if a leader is fit and approved by the gods or by God, the country enjoys prosperity and blessing and fruitful harvests and just general prosperity of the people. And that's how you know that the leadership can be trusted, that they're approved by the divine. Lost my place? I wish I had a teleprompter. It would be so much easier. And I certainly cannot memorize anything in my increasing age. Anyway. So, peace and prosperity, leadership is blessed and should be respected. But the opposite holds true as well. When disaster strikes again and again, it indicates that heaven is displeased with the leadership, and the people must get rid of them and replace them for the sake of the nation. And that holds true, like I said, globally. The mandate of heaven is specific to China, but this behavior certainly is not. Like I said, you can find it in the Bible as well, the books of the prophets. So whether for pragmatic reasons, based on infrastructure failure and irresponsible building practices, or spiritual reasons that are based on the perceived attitude of the divine, the conclusion ends up being the same. And the exposure of failure is literally at all costs in China right now. Human nature, like I said, is the same everywhere. So the same often applies to any country, in every person. Whether you approach a set of facts from a spiritual viewpoint or a secular one, the conclusion is very frequently similar or the same. So it comes down to this. The proof that we have, for instance, that that scientific fact is fact, um, is, like I said earlier, it works. It's predicated on whether it functions as it's intended to. We can fly airplanes, for example, and most of us have, at some point or another, at least once in our lives, trusted an airplane to fly us from place to place. Why? Because the principles of aerodynamics hold true and make it possible. We can use electricity in every home because electronic engineering works, etc. You can use that for anything from, basic furniture to the most complicated, complex technologies. So the reasons, that you trust your chair not to collapse when you sit in it could be anything. You might trust gravity. You might trust faith that the gods will not let you fall on your ass. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that the chair works. It functions in a reliable, predictable way to allow us to perform tasks. And that is why the realm of spirit is separate from the realm of science, and always should be. This is why it is essential to keep the separation of church or other faith-based institutions and state. The government should never be based on spiritual faith and connected to it. Ideas and faith do not interface with the 3D world, and they are not intended to. This is why it is meaningless and even harmful to take an evangelistic or proselytizing approach to faith, no matter what faith it is. Once you start saying, this is the only truth, and you're going to suffer consequences if you don't join me and believe the same thing, that I believe. It doesn't work because it isn't meant to. You're never going to use reason and evidence to prove your faith. I know a lot of faiths have tried, notably Christianity. And if that were in fact evidentiary, and if the evidence held up, there would be a hell of a lot more Christians, and I wouldn't have left. And it's not just me, certainly. Greater minds than mine have come to the conclusion it doesn't work for them. So we, humans, we have all the tools that we need in order to interact cooperatively with objective reality, to cooperate on practical projects, to accomplish amazing feats of technology together. Science works across all religious or imaginal boundaries, including geography, toward cooperative ends. It does not work to prove one spiritual path the one and only truth, because it's not meant for that. Personal beliefs must be respected as just that, personal. The spiritual realm uses totally different interfaces from the physical one. The physical realm is a reality that we all share as human beings. That is not the case with the other world, with the world of faith, religion, whatever you would like to call it, or non-faith. I'm certainly not meaning to exclude agnostics or atheists. Their decision to not have faith is equally sacred, should be equally respected. We are not meant to force universal belief, universal embrace, rather, of one set of beliefs above all others. It doesn't work, and it only results in atrocities like the Dark Ages, like the Holocaust. We end up massacring each other over things that we have no business arguing over in the first place. Setting boundaries and respecting the boundaries of others is vital in realms that are private and personal. Cooperation is vital in shared reality. And this is why I am not going to proselytize Christians. I am going to respect their faith, even though it's not for me, even though I have reasons that seem good to me, that I chose to stop following it. Just because that decision was right for me does not necessarily mean that it is right for everybody else. So it applies, to every faith, not just mine, not just yours, not just one. It applies in general to spirituality. So until we grasp this, really grasp it, and even I'm not saying I do, because I enjoy arguing much more than I should on matters of faith, and it's pointless. The most sacred thing we can do is respect each other's faith, each other's personal beliefs. It doesn't have anything to do with me, what you choose to believe. I stand before my gods and my conscience, and that's what I need to be worried about, period. Same for you, same for everybody. You worry about yourself and your soul, or lack of one. It doesn't matter to anyone else. So I think unless and until we really learn this vital lesson, humanity is going to be doomed to continue war and destructive efforts to force compliance with one specific norm, where instead we should be embracing our diversity with open and joyous hearts. Every faith has different holidays, for instance. I love not just my own holidays, but I have celebrated Passover and other Jewish holidays. I've celebrated, of course, all the Christian holidays and others as well. There are too many to name. And they are incredibly educational. You always learn something going and celebrating someone else's holiday. It's wonderful. I definitely encourage it. If you have the chance, go to a celebration of a holiday that you never heard of before. Eat some food you never heard of before, and so forth. These are things that we are meant to differ on because it is more beautiful that way. It's just more intense, educational. We learn more from each other when we embrace our differences and unify in spite of them on the things that really matter. So that's it for today. I just wanted to get that out. We must learn to agree to disagree on everything that doesn't matter and cooperate on the things that do matter. We need to learn to respect facts again. We need to learn to respect what works. And accept evidence when it matters, not when it doesn't matter. We don't demand it when it doesn't matter and it can't be given. Anyway, that's it for now, and hope you guys are enjoying the rest of your summer, and I'll be back. Take care.